Hello there, my name is Ed Romero, independent SEO consultant, and today I'd like to share 5 tips for communicating SEO priorities effectively. So why does communication matter for SEO priorities? Well, I think it's important to note that SEO really can't do it alone, particularly if it's a complex web ecosystem. You have multiple work streams across multiple groups, and honestly, you have limited budget. Communicating SEO priorities effectively allows you to realize the resources that you may need to see those SEO initiatives to fruition. So with that, let's get started. Tip number 1. Identify key stakeholders and create a clear understanding of their goals and objectives. You may face a lot less resistance if you align your SEO priorities with stakeholders' goals and objectives. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy. For example, I know a lot of developers, they triage issues and support requests through a ticket management system like Jira. Their goal and objective may be to make sure the ticket requests, they abide by certain requirements. Aligning your support issues with ticket requirements preferred by the developer honestly makes sure that developer can digest what you're trying to communicate. Additionally, if you keep in mind the goals and objectives of stakeholders that greenlight certain projects or invest into certain projects, you're more than likely to get the resources that you need for your SEO initiatives. For example, executive sponsors, they want to make sure that there is an ROI with, for the most part, everything that they're taking on. SEO is no different. By providing or clearly communicating your SEO priorities with supporting data, supporting case studies, it's more than likely to get approved by executive sponsors. Which leads me to my next point. Tip number 2. Use data to support your SEO priorities and communicate how they are tied into the overall marketing strategy. First and foremost, data helps you build a case study around what you're recommending. It tells stakeholders what's worked, what hasn't, but it also gauges current performance. This data can be retrieved from a number of places: Google Analytics, SEMrush, Google Search Console. Data can also reference competitors to see what's worked for them. Supporting data allows teams to assess priorities, particularly in light of them juggling multiple projects. And keep in mind, SEO is just one aspect, one spoke in a large wheel that is the web ecosystem. And by tying it back to the overall marketing strategy, you tie back SEO initiatives and priorities back to what's important to the brand and keeping it very relevant and customized. Tip number 3. Create a visual representation of your SEO priorities to make it easier for stakeholders to understand and remember. We've all seen these lists. They are audits that are performed from SEMrush, Ahrefs, or even just outputs of Search Console, screenshots, dare I say. But they don't really help. What ends up happening is stakeholders get overwhelmed and confused, and rightfully so. There might be little to no context on what you're recommending in these types of lists. A visual makes it a lot more digestible, and it doesn't have to be very complex. You don't have to be a designer or a data scientist. Rather, what I found works really, really well is a matrix. That is, you have a y-axis, you have an x-axis. You can measure or attempt to assess impact versus effort. And by listing out where certain initiatives or priorities lie on this matrix, you can communicate what might be a little bit more realistic in getting done in the near term and the long term. Tip number 4. Regularly update stakeholders on the progress of SEO initiatives and adjust priorities as needed. Stakeholders want to understand that all the energy and time and money they invested into SEO, if it was worth the cost. By keeping them updated with progress and blockers, you actively make them participants in your SEO strategy. And as participants, we don't want to fight a losing battle. We want to make sure that we offer all the resources we can to make sure we come up on top. By keeping stakeholders updated with what's happening with SEO, you also make them advocates because now they're in the game. They may better understand what resources may be required and what resources they may have to offer to make sure SEO is a success. And finally, tip number 5, explain technical SEO concepts in non-technical terms to ensure everyone is on the same page. We've all been there. I know I get super excited when I talk about SEO topics, and with that, I may talk really technical. But you have to be careful because the verbiage you use and the jargon you use may be lost on certain stakeholders that may not be technically savvy. Or if you're talking to a higher up stakeholder or an executive, they may not need to know this level of detail. What's more, if they get lost in the verbiage and jargon, how can they prioritize something that they don't really truly understand? Dial it back a little bit. Use layman terms. Use more basic language, not condescendingly, but in a way that's a little bit more casual. In doing so, you increase the likelihood of your stakeholders understanding. Plus, if you're using a lot of technical terms, There might be a lot of assumptions made on stakeholders as they attempt to understand what you're communicating. Assumptions aren't that great. It can lead to delays, loss of dollars, and pushback on your priorities as stakeholders attempt to understand what you're communicating. So with that, I hope this has helped. Please let me know if there are any other tips or tricks that you may use to effectively communicate SEO priorities. Please place them in the comment section below. Thank you again, and I'll see you on the next one.